We're back to Neil Haley's show, and my guest today is going to talk about uh, you want to be understood. You think you could be understood, but the fact is you're really not communicating well. So my guest is Deborah Morehead. Deborah, thanks for stopping by. And am I correct? It's just something that is a issue where people want to be understood. They want to be understood. They want to be understood, but yet they're not communicating to that other person how to be understood. So it's really, you have to put the onus and responsibility on myself, not the person that's trying to be understood, not the person receiving that information, wanting to be understood, right?
That's exactly correct. And Neil, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored because I know you interview so many people. It's so exciting to be here. And yeah, that is exactly what my chapter in this Life Boost book is all about, is that it really is on you. If you want to be understood when conflict arises, it really is on you.
It's on the person. So a lot of times say, why aren't you getting me? Why aren't you understanding this? Which causes conflict all the time with different people, different situations, business, anything. Why don't you understand me, instead of taking a step back? And what kind of step do we take back, Deborah, when we find out someone is not understanding our message, isn't understanding why we're angry, understanding why things are the way they are, and that person's just not understanding the messaging? What do we do?
Yeah, the bottom line is, the only way that ultimately you are going to be understood actually is that exact step back, and that you connect with them first. And believe it or not, you need to understand them first. So I really want you to hear that. We have to understand the other person before they are going to understand us.
Oh, that's crazy. But yeah, that again brings the humility of the person, that you need to take a step back and say, hey, they're not understanding me. Let's take a step back, and now I'm going to understand who they are. That's what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm saying. What you really have to understand with where this comes from, let's be real, right? Neil, you and I, when there's a conflict, we are right. We want to win, and we are right? We believe we're right. Listen, the toilet paper rolls over the top, and the toothpaste is pushed from the bottom, not the middle. I'm right, you're wrong. That's what we go into. That's the energy that we go into conflict. But what automatically happens in the other person when I'm coming in trying to force you to understand me is that it automatically is going to put the other person in their hind brain, their survival part of their brain, on the defense. And they're going to try to get you to understand them. And that's exactly what happens in bad conflict, is basically you have two, survival brains fighting to win and to be right. And when that happens, connection is lost, and there will never be any understanding that will happen.
Oh, that's not good. That's going to lead to a lot more conflict, a lot more disagreements, and take a stepping back and understanding that other person. So it's a lot about observation, questions in a way that is a nice way to get to know. If you're having a conflict with a client, or you're trying to understand, I'm trying to say, hey, can you understand me? Take a step back and understand them. And that, what recommendations of ways can we understand the other person and what they're feeling?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I basically give 3 really great tips in my chapter. And what's really interesting is the first 2 tips have nothing to do with what you actually say to be understood. The first tips have to do with understanding them. And so the very first tip is exactly what we're talking about, which is really called active listening. I know we've probably all heard that, but what we tend to do in regular conversations is even what we're doing in this interview, right? Which is I talk, you respond to what I say, you talk back. That's what regular conversations happen. But active listening is that I really want to be curious, and I really want to understand what the other person says. So that's the first tip.
Okay, what's next after that?
The second tip, again, is more about them. And that is, and I'm going to go back to that survival part of our brain. The second tip is what's called validating. And validating basically says, I'm going to find some point in what you are saying that actually I can agree with. And here's why this becomes so important, and why then ultimately you will be understood, is because when we are in that hindbrain, that survival brain part, we have to keep fighting until the other person gets it. So when I actually find a point to say, that makes sense to me why you thought this or why you felt this, all of a sudden their defenses can drop down. Then there's going to be room for the third tip, which is finally where you are able to share what you are wanting them to understand. But even that has to be done in a way that is going to keep their defenses down, so they're actually going to hear you.
What if their defenses aren't down after you've tried that? You walk away, right?
Good. That's a great question, Neil. If my validating hasn't brought their defenses down yet, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably come back around and I'm going to do more of the active listening. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to say, okay, then I'm still really curious. Help me to understand more. What I'm hearing you say is this. Am I missing something? What am I missing? So that I can rehear and re-clarify what they're saying. And then I can still come back and validate again, maybe a new piece. So it's kind of a rinse and repeat until I've brought their defenses down.
So best place people, Deborah, can find more information, where can they go?
Yeah, you can find me at deborahmorehead.com and reach out. And I'd love to help you to know how to make sure you are being understood, but starting with understanding them.
All right, fantastic. You're listening and watching The Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in just a moment.